One of the most powerful uses of ratios are when you look at the ratios in a triangle and relate them to their angles. And that is the study of trigonometry. We're going to refresh our memory from previous years on just how we label a triangle and what the primary trigonometric ratios are. So to begin with, the reference angle, this guy over here, okay, we call this theta. That is just a fancy Greek letter. So we write it like this. We call that the reference angle. Now the reference angle can be anything but the 90-degree angle. So if I wanted, I could have theta up here, up here. But for our purposes, we're going to keep it down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Relative to theta now, we can define the other sides of this triangle. So side BC, which is over here, we call this the opposite side. Okay, so I'm just going to write in OPP for opposite. The side AC, which is this one over here, we call this the adjacent side, or let me write that as ADJ. ADJ. And finally, we have the line that is opposite the right angle, and that is called the hypotenuse, or we can just write HYP. And if you recall this mnemonic device, which is SOHCAHTOA, what that means is that when we want to relate the angles, an angle and it's the sides of a triangle, we can do sine theta, which is opposite over hypotenuse. And if you look at the first letters, the S stands for the S in so, the O is the O over here, and the H is the H over here in hypotenuse. So sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse, and we know that cosine theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. And again, I'm going to go C over here, A over here, and an H over here. And finally, we have tan, which is the TOA part. There's the CA and the H, and then we have the TO and the A, and that's going to be tan theta is going to be opposite over adjacent. And that is the SOHCAHTOA mnemonic device and how it works. So that's a refresher. Sometimes we want to look at the reciprocal of these, and they have fancy names, which I'm going to write over here. And it's just basically, taking the fraction that you have and flipping the numerator and the denominator and getting a new one. These come up in trigonometric identities for the most part. So the first one is cosecant of theta. We write that as CSC theta, which you can see over here. And that is defined as the reciprocal of the sine one. Okay, so usually we write first as 1 over sine theta. But if you were to do that now with this side of sine theta, what you end up with is the hypotenuse over the opposite. Okay, so 1 over sine theta is the hypotenuse over the opposite. The way to see that is if you take this, these equal fractions, we have like sine theta over 1, I'll write it over 1, is opposite over hypotenuse. Well, if I just flip those around, I get 1 over sine is equal to hypotenuse over opposite, right? I'm just flipping the fractions. Secant theta is the reciprocal of cosine, so it's 1 over cos theta, and that will be the hypotenuse over the adjacent. And finally, cotangent is 1 over tan theta, and we're going to write that as adjacent over, not a hypotenuse, but the opposite side. So those are your reciprocal trigonometric ratios.